congregation, this is where you're going to come in. Probably the most typical one might be something like this. So just very, very simple on the tom. And what that kind of does is that there's a little bit of a gap in the music, there's a little bit of a fill, it's very, very straightforward, but it's enough for the congregation to prick up their ears and without even thinking about it, know that, this is kind of where we might be starting to sing. So that's one of the ways you can kind of support what the worship leader is trying to do and what the church is trying to do. It's not a particularly interesting fill. You go and play that all the time in some band that's playing funk outside the church. They're not going to think too highly of you, I wouldn't have thought. But again, it's a useful tool for doing what we're trying to do, which is trying to serve the church. So that's one. Let's think of some other ones. In more rocky songs, quite a useful one is to use a combination of the low tom and your snare to build up into a chorus. Let's take an example. If we did Shout to the Lord again, just because everyone knows it. Yeah, so if you get to before the chorus and it gets to never cease to worship. Now it's pretty simple, but what it is doing is it's slightly crescendoing, and B, it's bringing up the power level, if you like, to go into the chorus. So it's not, but it's more of a, so they're graduated. The first one's a bit quieter and you're crescendoing towards the end. Or you might find that drummers use this over a longer period, say 2 bars. In a faster song it might be. It's nothing special, but in the right environment, it's doing exactly what the song needs, going from one place to another. You wouldn't use something as strong as what I've just did in a lot of the songs that we play, but if it's a reasonably heavy, loud song, that can be quite useful in bringing up the band behind you. Another one, it's not a cheat, but it's a good way to make yourself sound quite quickly, if you know what I mean. So a lot of people who are right-handed think of starting fills with their left hand because that's the one that's already on the snare drum. So you're playing, you think something like that, and you started with your left, and that feels natural. But if you start with your right, you can do some quite quick things. For example, a very simple one is right. Now actually, that is really easy to play. Almost anyone can play that and play it quite quickly. You're limited simply by how fast you can do a single stroke. If you can do that, then you can do quite quickly. I'd recommend that as something where you need to do fast fills. Simple as you like, but you won't take a lot of practice to get your head around that. Where that's useful for, in particular, is places where you might have some stabs, which the band are doing, and you've got to fill in between. Where could I think of an example of this? I probably can't actually. Off the top of my head, that's really bad, isn't it? But if you're doing, for example, a stab of that went ba ba ba, for example, which is you actually come across that in quite a lot of Christian music. Instead of doing, which would be fine, or using the bass drum to emphasise with the cymbals, that's quite useful. Instead of just doing that, you can do, for example, and that's just taken that fill, subtracted the snare, and just done that. It's really easy, but it sounds quite quick. So, for example, is a pretty straightforward way to sound groovy without too much technical difficulty. So I'd say have a go at that one. It also works for slower songs. Same technique. It's the main thing is if you're starting with your right, it's just so simple to go around the kit like that. If you're starting with your left, you get there and you're like, okay, well, what do I do? I've got to cross over my other one. So have a go at that. And then fourthly, this is probably the last one I'm going to be able to think of off the top of my head. Flams are quite good. So for anyone who's done rudiments, a flam is like this. So you can use those on toms as well. So in a slower song, you might get something like this. Or something like that. And these just sound a lot more interesting. It gives them a lot more power and presence. So, yeah, have a go at that. That's probably enough to get started, hopefully. I can think of some more if anyone's particularly desperate.